Hi, welcome back. Now, the goal of this video is to essentially, I'll start working on our data pipeline, right? A data pipeline that is going to provide this report in a way that will be easy to sort of consume from any dashboard or, for someone who's not so technical with SQL, right? For someone who's not technical with SQL, they might struggle to produce this query, right? um, even though they might need the query from time to time. Um, as well, this, like we said in the past, this has a lot of performance issues, not because maybe it's written properly, but because of the amount of, the joins, the number of tables involved, the number of computation that is necessary, right? And so the idea is to do this computation once so that every other person in our in code company can just come and pick up the data. So yeah, so what I would essentially have is we will sort of import, these are the main parts of the data, these tables, the main parts of the data, of the source of the data. Essentially, they're the main source of the data. Um, just to correct myself. And so what we will do initially is to import these sources because they are not in DBT. We'll bring in these sources, and then we will then build this first part of the pipeline, right? And then build this other part of the pipeline, this CTE, because this CTE is actually dependent on this other CTE. So we'll build this as another part of the pipeline, and then at the end of the day, we'll build the final computation as the pipeline. So we just jump to this part where we sort of import the data sets, right? Remember, the data sets is, the data set is essentially like, it can be found in the Snowflake sample data. So first, what I would maybe suggest that we do is to go and look for this page, which is basically add sources to your DAG. You can easily find it by, just going to Google and saying add sources to DAG and put DBT. Most likely you get some, some link that basically says that you can add the sources to your DAG. So this is the right link. And so here you can then follow this pattern. We're going to use it anyways. We're going to use it here anyway. So I'm just going to go back to the Git pod project. So when you come here, you notice that I already deleted the sample data sets that was coming with the DBT initial, like the DBT initialization. And so now one thing we could do is to have like a folder where we sort of have our sources. So all the sources are going to be best coming from a folder. And then from the folder, we can also create like more sources, like maybe, let's say, we can have a folder for the sources, right? So it's usually a good practice to have all the sources in a folder because essentially most sources can be used in different departments. So, for instance, you could have like a source of customer information and, a source of orders. And a source of customer information will still be used maybe in the customer service department. And it could also be used in, say, like the accounting department, right? Because you could still have to use it here, or maybe you might be using it in maybe like the operational department. So usually we have a general folder for the source so that we store the source. And then now we also have like another folder, maybe perhaps under the models actually. So we create this folder under the models. And so the folder could be like, let's just call this like a finance, right? This might not necessarily, but let's just say this is the finance department and this is the sources. So different teams or different companies have different strategies of how they want to name the files or how they want to structure of the project, but this is, a good structure, I would say. Sorry, I think I already deleted that. So this will be a good, structure. I see a few companies that I sort of have seen a similar structure. And so, in the sources, one thing we need is to have like the YAML file. So we need a YAML file. So you could name this the sources.yaml. You might also name it the schema.yaml file. I think a couple of people use the schema. It's fine to use either ways. The most important thing that you have to do in this case is to have something like this structure that basically tells like this is a source, and from the source you basically name the source. So this naming is just basically what you wish to name the source. It's not what the source is named from the database. It doesn't have any attribute that is being measured from the database or something like this. So you name the source, and then you sort of like bring in the database and then the schema file, right? You say, okay, I want to get, this data from this database and this schema, right? And then you take all the tables that you like to get the data from. So now if you copy this, you sort of come to this part and you paste it. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake here. So you have to come when you copy this, I don't know, it seems like the copy might not be working. Perhaps it works for you. So it's not working. So I would maybe just copy it like, directly. In this case, so I copy this directly, and then I bring it here. So one thing you have to take note of is that this is just a structure that we have copied, and we're going to sort of like replace the structure with our own scenario. So we could call this source, let's say we call this source our finance data source, right? Let's just call it finance data. Let's call it finance data. It's not maybe necessarily accurate. That's it. So now you have like in the finance data, this data is like, coming from this data set that we would like to use is coming from this database. This is a database, right? And this is what you can find. This is the database. So then we just go to the source YAML part and put in the database this thing. Okay. Then we will go and look for the schema. So this is the schema that we will be getting our data from. So we would then, this is essentially the schema where we're getting all these items from. So we'll just come here and put this. So this is like what we're trying to do. And so now the next question is, what tables are we going to be using in this project, right? So I will leave this query in the description of the video so you can, because then we would use this query to build our first set of pipeline. So then we can now come and say, okay, we want this table. This is the date table that we want. And then we put like this table, this one. Put this table here. And then, and another table that we would be using is maybe catalog sales. And so we also put this table here, right? So we're just basically like telling, telling DBT where to find the data is, from, whatever data we'll be liking to use, then we're just basically telling DBT where to find. Right? We say, hey, you can find it in this database. We can find this schema. And then let me see. And then the last one is the call center, right? So we can find it in the call center. And so now we could essentially delete this source because we don't really need this source, right? So we don't need this source because it's like we're not getting like an extra, we don't have an extra source in this case. But if we have an extra source, it's also fine for us to like create it. But just make sure the most important part of this is to ensure that you sort of have, this kind of structure. So you have this kind of structure where, like it's sort of indented and the name of the source will be like this and the database schema and tables will be on the same line as this. And then you could have the names of the table that is slightly indented as well. And so this is like the approach. So then you will go to your sources folder, and in your sources folder you create a new file. So the idea now is that you're bringing in these files, so this data, you're bringing them in to like your into your DBT. So first, like we said, I think maybe this might be a good time to actually stop recording so that then we now import the actual, we write the first set of models in the next video. So let's just keep this to the next video, then we will continue from there. Thank you.